Hi, thanks for joining me. This is Mike Brusca. I'm a partner at Davis and Brusca. Today, what we wanted to discuss are elopements. Uh, now, when I was before I was a practitioner in this field, I should say, if I heard elopement, I thought of romantic getaway, two people who want to avoid an expensive wedding, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Elopements in the context of long-term care are one of the most dangerous events that can occur. And to be clear, there is absolutely no defense to an elopement. These should never, ever happen. Um, and so it's really important that people understand what they are and what they can do as a family member to help prevent them from happening within the facility. So let's talk about what is an elopement. So an elopement is when you have a resident that leaves the facility on their own. I'm not talking about when a family member wants to sign someone out. That happens all the time. They want to take someone out for ice cream or dinner or take them home for the weekend. That's fine. And they're under supervision of the family. What I'm talking about is when a person leaves the facility. And there's a lot of ways you can leave the facility. I will tell you, currently, I have several of these cases. They are horrible. The outcomes are terrible. They are the types of outcomes that you will read about in newspapers. And as I said, there's absolutely no defense. Like these should never, ever happen. There's no universe where an elopement is excusable, um, or that there's even a acceptable reason why it happened. They should never happen. Now, when you have folks in long-term care, a lot of people are there for rehab, right? So they've had surgery or some kind of medical event that requires them to either get their strength back or to learn a skill or something like that. Of course, you have long-term care residents, and these are folks who are typically there for cognitive issues. I'm not saying you can't be in a facility for a physical issue. I've had folks who had been admitted to long-term care for, they had been long-term MS sufferers or something along those lines, but most of the people in long-term care are there for cognitive issues. That is, they cannot live at home safely. And so they have to go into an environment where they're going to be supervised all the time. Look, I've been in countless nursing homes during my time doing this work. I've never seen a sign over the front door that says, congratulations, you made it. I mean, the only reason people are there is because they have to be there. And it's a very difficult decision for families to make. And so the primary driver for that is safety. That is, son, daughter, spouse just says, it's not safe for them to be home. I had this in my own family with my grandfather. My grandmother really struggled with my grandfather who had dementia, and he was a wanderer. While he was incompetent mentally, he could walk. And so that can be very dangerous, right? Because people that suffer from cognitive impairment have what is called within the trade poor safety awareness. They don't understand when they're in danger. And so, as a consequence, they can really put themselves in danger without even knowing it. Now, when you go into long term care, a family is trusting a facility to not only understand this basic issue, but also to address this basic issue. And sadly, it doesn't always happen. So, when I talk about elopement, I mean leaving a facility without any supervision, and it's an unauthorized leave. Now, like I said, this is very dangerous because you can elope in lots of different ways. You can walk out of the building, you can walk out of a common area, and I have these cases right now where people go out a window. And I have to tell you, those are horrendous. The injuries are usually lethal, and there's no excuse for that. So I want to start by talking about the elopements out of windows because this one still baffles me. I do travel a lot. I stay in a lot of hotels for work, and I cannot remember the last time I stayed in a hotel where you could open the windows more than 6 inches. I can't even think of it. Typically, if you can even open the windows, you can slide them open about 6 inches, and then there's a mechanism that prevents the window from opening. Let's say you ask yourself, why is that? Well, listen, I'm not running, the hotel, but to me, it seems like I don't want someone to jump out the window. Okay, Now, that makes good sense, and that's a really practical way to prevent that kind of thing from happening. That is, there's a mechanism in the window jamb that prevents it from sliding open any further than 6 inches. You can't possibly get out of it. However, what shocks me to this day is in a nursing home with cognitively impaired people, some of who are tremendously depressed, or they're confused or anxious, have windows that can open. Or conversely, they recognize this is an issue, and so here are some of the measures they have for preventing it from opening. We put a wood screw part away into the window jamb, right? I had a case where a guy just took it out. I mean, there are ways to prevent windows from opening. They can sort it out for hotels. Why in any universe would a nursing home not have a similar feature on their windows? I don't know, other than the fact that they don't want to spend the money to do it. I don't have an explanation for it. I don't know why any of the windows open, other than perhaps for fire safety, but to the extent that you're looking at the two risks, it's like, I think it's pretty clear that to me the risk is that the windows will open, and a person will climb out and get seriously, seriously injured. So that's one type of elopement. Another type of elopement is where people are in a common outdoor area and they just leave. Now, let's be clear. When you have cognitively impaired people, sometimes they smoke or things of that nature. You do have to go outside. And candidly, I've been in plenty of nursing homes. I would, if it was a nice day or even a modestly nice day, I'd want to be outside. And in some nursing homes, I wouldn't care if there was snow on the ground. I want to be outside. Now, here's the issue with that, right? They have to be supervised. Okay, this is called a common area. So whether it's a day room or a dining area or a courtyard or something like that, it has to be supervised. You just cannot have residents out there on their own. Now, if there is a courtyard or some type of a yard, it should have a fence that's locked. Like, these folks should not be able to just walk out of it. They shouldn't be able to do that. And so these areas not only have to be secure, but they also have to be supervised. Typically, an aide does that. In a good facility, there's an aide who's tasked, and they will rotate it around. I can't tell you how many cases I've had where people that are allegedly in supervised common areas get up and fall and are injured, and the aide just missed them. I mean, I've seen that in so many nurse notes you can't possibly know, because it's like really the only excuse you can think of when you are not supervising a common area, and then you go in there and you find residents on the ground with broken hips. So to this end, that extends outside the facility to these common areas that have to be supervised so residents cannot just leave, right? All right. A third way residents can walk out of the building is they just walk out the front door. I've had that too. I had an instance where that happened, and fortunately, like several hours later, they found the person who was unharmed, fortunately. But to this extent, yeah, just walked right out the front door. And now, normally there's a front desk there. Somebody should be out there to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen. That one was unexcused. I mean, not unexcused. There was no reason given as to how that conceivably happened, but that's another way that they can just get out of the building. Of course, when you take residents to appointments, they should have someone with them. This was not skilled nursing, but this was assisted living, where they took this gal to a doctor's appointment and then just left her there. And after 15 minutes, she forgot why she was there and she just left. And the facility didn't recognize the fact that she was gone until the family called to see what they wanted her to bring her for dinner. They had no idea she wasn't in the facility. And they found her on a median of a 4-lane road. Fortunately, she wasn't hurt. So these are the types of things that fall under the ambit of elopements, and you can see why they're so incredibly dangerous. Sometimes residents, they'll try to take the bus, or they'll try to find a cab, or they'll just walk around, oftentimes hit by cars. They don't understand traffic lights. They can be in very grave danger when they walk out of that facility. Okay. So let's talk about tools to prevent elopements, because like I said, there is no excuse for an elopement. I know I've said that 4 times, but I'm just here to tell you, if you have a loved one in a nursing home who has eloped and fortunately was not injured or killed, whatever they're telling you is not sufficient. they should report that to the state, and they should get a deficiency. There's no universe where you should be able to walk out of a nursing home. Okay. So really what it comes down to is adequate supervision. This is a federal regulation. And to adequately supervise your residents, you have to have the right number of staff. And as I've talked about on this podcast multiple times, staffing really is the core of the care given in a nursing home. Everybody knows that, from CMS to the White House down to the CNAs. Everybody knows if you don't have enough people to do the work doesn't get done, and that includes supervision. And when you talk about supervision in these common areas, that drops right off the map. When you don't have enough CNAs that you can't say to one, listen, I want you to go in the common room or the day room with these folks while they're watching TV and, make sure that everybody's okay. There's like no one can do it. They don't have time to do it. They're doing other things like showering, bathing, dressing, denture care, things of that nature. So they don't have enough aides to simply put someone in that day room to watch them, even though that's what the standard of care requires. Okay. The use of common areas is a really good one because when you do have residents that are cognitively impaired, though, using these common areas can be good because you have these folks in one spot, right? So it's sometimes safer to have them in common areas or at the nurse's station than in their rooms individually because that's more of a burden on the aides to make sure everyone's okay. Plus, there's also the socialization aspect of that, being there in the presence of other people and talking to them and things of that nature. A lot of times they'll do the activities in the common room, and then they are supervised, usually by an aide or volunteers and an activities director. But there's plenty of times where people just got the TV on and they're in there. That needs to be supervised, right? Otherwise, people can get up and just walk right out the building. There's a device called the next thing I want to talk about is a medical device called a Wander Guard. Now, this is something that you wear on your wrist or your ankle, and the doors are set up as such that they have a device almost like when you go into a retail store, right? So you know that annoying plastic thing they have to take off of the clothes when you buy them because if you go through the door, it'll sound an alarm. A Wander Guard works the exact same way. So in this instance, the staff know who wears the Wander Guard. These are people who are cognitively impaired, but they're mobile. They walk, they ambulate. Some of them ambulate okay. So in this instance, they wear the Wander Guard, and when they pass through the doors, it will sound immediately. And this lets them know if they've gotten through the basic supervision they're supposed to have, then the Wander Guard is a stopgap to tell you, hey, listen, they're on their way out the door. Now, keep in mind, this is not a one intervention solution. Obviously, the supervision is key, but this is almost like a backstop to that. If they are able to get to an area where they're not supervised, maybe like stairwell or something like that, they pass through the doors, and the alarm will sound. Now, in the same vein, the doors need to be alarmed as well, and the alarms need to be tested and work. So, for example, if an alarm is not working, then it's meaningless. Or if an alarm can't be heard, it's also meaningless. So these tools need to be tested by the administrator and the maintenance staff to be sure that these are working, and they will notify the right people when they've been opened. Because like I said, I've seen cases where some facilities, they don't have them working, or the staff want to go smoke and they go out that door and they'll prop it open or something like that. That can be tremendously lethal. I don't know how else to put it. So it's not a minor thing. You have to be sure your doors are shut and the alarms are operating correctly. Listen, that's not a heavy lift, is it? I mean, what's that take, like 5 minutes to test the doors? So that's also very important. Also, now this you see in assisted living where they have what they call memory care unit or a unit just for people with cognitive impairment, but the doors require a punch code to enter and exit, and this would prevent people from leaving the unit or the facility. They're typical in nursing homes as well, but this idea that in order for someone to get through there, they have to go get help to do that. And so that can also be very helpful. Another way I've seen is that sometimes facilities that have elevators will put large black mats in front of the elevators. I've read studies that show that people who have, I believe it's either Alzheimer's or dementia, do not like walking on black mats. They have a hard time distinguishing between that and a hole, so they'll avoid them, and that keeps them from coming to the elevators without asking for help. So that's another very simple intervention that you can use to keep your residents from eloping out of the building, or at least getting off the unit. And of course, we discussed windows. Now, there are a million different ways that you can do this. Certainly, if if you're an administrator right now listening to my podcast, I would suggest to you that simply putting a screw in the window jamb is not sufficient. There are there are multiple devices. This is a known issue. They are designed specifically for this purpose, and there are industrial tools that make this so that the windows cannot do that. And obviously, the downside to a window open on the second, third, or fourth floor is catastrophic. So, to that end, employing those is really helpful. So, to wrap up, I would just say to you, listen, if you have a family member or someone you care about in long-term care that is ambulatory or can get themselves around in a wheelchair well, but they are cognitively impaired, this is a topic you want to discuss in your care conference. There should be an assessment, an elopement assessment upon admission to a facility to see whether or not this person is an elopement risk. Um, However, listen, if it's your loved one, I'd ask about it. I'd want to see the assessment. I want to talk about it in the care conference. I want to make sure that they know that that's not going to happen to your person, because what you don't want is a call like one case I had where they found out that their mom had left the facility because they got a call from the person who was currently living in her house that had been sold 3 years before, and she had eloped from the facility and taken actually a cab to her old address and was trying to go home, which she hadn't lived in for 3 years. So to avoid that, or a worse call from the local police department, a person has eloped and been hit by a car or truck. Uh, it's something that you want to address, and it may not be something that you appreciate upon admission because you just assume they're going to this facility, they're going to be supervised. But I would ask the questions myself if it was my loved one. So again, thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of it, and have a great day.